Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode number 13 in the book of 1 Thessalonians. Today's passage is such an encouragement. In fact, it tells us that the 6 verses that we're going to look at today are supposed to be an encouragement for brothers and sisters, believers, that these verses are specifically supposed to be used to encourage one another. I'm going to call today believers becoming undead. Undead is just a big theme in TV and movies and stuff. But today we're going to find out about actually what happens to people after they die, if they're believers. That's kind of a critical thing. So there's stuff to know in this passage. Pay attention. 6 verses. Here we go. Verse 13 from 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. But we do not want you to be uninformed, brothers, about those who are asleep, that you may not grieve as others who do not have hope. So he's telling us here, first of all, that there's stuff to know, so let's not be uninformed. Secondly, he's telling us that believers, quote unquote, die, but he actually doesn't even want to call it death. He uses a different word for it, which is asleep. Now, the characteristic of asleep is you're kind of out of it 1 minute and the next minute you're awake. That's the picture of this. And everybody that you know is eternal. Everybody you know is going to wake up to an eternal consciousness, an awakeness. I recently heard of a comedian who said you're just going to be dead and then you're not going to know it. And he pronounced his theology and was making light of it. But really, that's just wishful thinking on his part. This is actually what's going to happen. He is going to wake up, and the question is, where is he going to wake up? All right, and then the third thing from this passage is grieving is real, but it needs to be an informed grieving, and that is informed with hope. Okay, that's verse 13. Verse 14. For since we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so, through Jesus, God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep. So here we have this hope in the fact that God is not done. The asleep something is going to happen to those that are asleep, and that is they're going to wake up, and we have a hope in it. Now, what is that based on? It's based on one fact, and that is that Jesus died and rose again. That is the foundation of this faith. So let's bank on that. That's the point. What assurity do we have for this? We have the assurity that Jesus died and rose. And then verse 15, for this we declare to you by a word from the Lord, that we who are alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will not precede those who have fallen asleep. So he's coming back. It's an authority that he gave Paul, that a word from the Lord. So that's how we know that this is true. Verse 15 talks about a coming back, the coming of the Lord. He is coming back. And then verse 16 is going to describe it. What kind of a coming? Rainbows and puppies, or something a little bit more, with a little more emphasis? Here it is, verse 16. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a cry of command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the sound of the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. So we talked before about the armies out day of the Lord, and this is going to be one of those days. So it describes archangels, which are the angels in charge. Their voices, so they're issuing sub commands through the angelic armies, I'm assuming, with trumpets, which is a way of announcing a coming, but it's also a way to communicate with your army. And so we find here that this picture is the exertation of the authority over death, over sin, over those who are asleep. And we find also in verse 16 here that we just read is that the dead in Christ will rise. We already heard in verse 14 that the Lord is going to bring with him people, and now we find that they're going to rise, and there's somehow this priorities. They're going to rise first and precede the living. So crazy things are happening in verse 16. Awesome, wonderful things. This is a great day for believers. Verse 17. Then we who are alive, who are left, we'll be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will always be with the Lord. Think about this. We are going to meet up in the clouds. That's the location. Who's the personnel? It's the asleep, the dead, quote unquote, and the Lord, and the people who haven't died. So you're getting the asleep people, the alive people, and the Lord. And what's the purpose? It's this meeting up. So when do you meet someone? You meet somebody on day one. Now, the cool thing about this is it tells you what happens on day two and day infinity. And that is, we will always, think about this, we will always be with the Lord. There's no expiration date on this passage. This passage has a beginning, which is the day one. That's the day we meet the Lord in the air with the believers who are dead and the believers who are alive. All of them becoming undead. And how long are they going to become undead? And that is forever. And where are they going to become undead? That is with the Lord. Then finally, verse 18, therefore encourage one another with these words. So I'm here to encourage you in death, because death isn't death. It's just asleep, which means you're going to wake up. And when you're going to wake up, you're going to be gathered to the Lord. This is for believers, and I'm sure there's another passage coming up here that's non-believers. That's why you want to be in this party. He's going to gather these people to himself. We're going to meet the Lord. He's going to bring us with him, and we're always going to be with him. To end, we're going to be with previous believers. That's a little added bonus. So we find in this passage how believers become undead. So just a couple of teaching points. Unless there's 10 of them in this passage, unless the Lord comes back, we're going to die, or the preferred nomenclature here is be asleep, and then we're going to wake up, and if we're believers, God is going to bring us with him. We're going to meet with him, and we're going to be with him always. You definitely want to be with this crowd. You get to decide now if you're going to be with the forever of the Lord, because afterwards it's going to be too late, because you sort of wake up either with him or wake up against him. So what are you doing with your eternity today? Believe, have faith, trust in him, be brought with him, and when you die, meet with him when you die, wake up with him, and always be with him. This podcast is called 7 Minutes of Be With Me, and we're going to move from that to being 100% be with me. What a great day. Be encouraged today. See you tomorrow.